I was lying in a hospital bed, clinging to my phone with trembling hands, when my own mother looked straight into the camera and said, "You expect us to drop everything for your silly surgery? We have tickets for Elton John tonight, and we're not giving them up." In that moment, I felt something inside me snap. That was the day I finally understood I was on my own. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster, do me a quick favor. Subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel, and your support keeps us going. My name is Natasha Wilson. I'm 33 years old, widowed, and mother to 2-year-old twins, Ethan and Emily. For as long as I can remember, my parents have never truly been parents. My younger sister Jessica was always the golden child, while I felt like a spare wheel nobody cared about. Growing up, I tried desperately to win their attention. I thought if I excelled in school or followed their rules perfectly, they'd see me as more than a burden. But no matter what I did, Jessica's achievements always outshined mine. If she got a small role in a local commercial, it was a huge celebration. If I graduated with honors, it was met with a distracted, "Oh, that's nice, dear." Years later, I married the love of my life, James. He was supportive, caring, and understood my complicated family dynamic because his own dad had walked out on him at a young age. We promised each other that we would create a warm, loving family, unlike the ones we grew up in. And for a while, we did exactly that. But 6 months ago, James was hit by a drunk driver and died almost instantly, leaving me a heartbroken single mother with 2 toddlers. My world shattered, yet somehow I kept moving forward. I worked as a graphic designer from home, raising Ethan and Emily as best as I could. Despite everything, I still sent my parents $2,500 every month to cover their mortgage and expenses because they'd taken early retirement and insisted they needed my help. Little did I know that this financial support was the only real connection they felt toward me. The day I had an emergency medical scare was the day all illusions crumbled. They refused to look after my twins while I was rushed into surgery, choosing an Elton John concert over their own grandchildren's safety. That's when I saw just how empty their love truly was. It was Christmas Eve at the Las Vegas Medical Center. I doubled over in pain, clenching my abdomen. The doctors told me I had internal bleeding that needed immediate surgical intervention. My friend and nurse, Valerie, stayed by my side, her face etched with concern. Meanwhile, my 2-year-old sat in a corner with borrowed coloring books, oblivious to how close their mother was to a life-threatening event. Desperate, I called my parents through a video app. I explained the situation, how I might need them to babysit the twins for at least one night. My mom's response? She literally rolled her eyes. "Natasha, how dare you ask us to cancel our holiday plans? We've had these concert tickets for months." My dad, equally annoyed, said, "You're such a burden. We're retired. We deserve to enjoy ourselves." That single word, burden, replayed in my mind like a broken record. I was begging them for help at the worst moment of my life. Instead of compassion, I got cruelty. My father's final words before they hung up left me hollow. "Don't bother us again with your so-called emergencies." Valerie, bless her heart, put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "I have a friend named Olivia who's a professional nanny. She's fantastic with kids, especially those who've been through trauma. Let me call her for you." At that point, I didn't even have the energy to cry. I nodded and gave her the go-ahead. Ethan and Emily had already lost their father. Now they were left to worry if they'd lose me, too. Lying there with tubes and monitors hooked up to me, I felt an immense wave of sorrow, but also a spark of self-preservation flickered to life. For years, I had sent my parents money like clockwork. They never missed an opportunity to remind me how I owed them for my upbringing. It never occurred to me that real family doesn't hold you hostage like that. That day, between painful cramps and swirling fear, I made a choice. I pulled out my phone and canceled every single automatic payment to my parents' bank account. Then I texted them a simple message. "I will no longer provide financial support. You chose your own comfort over my children's safety. Don't contact me again." Valerie helped me inform the doctors that Olivia would be arriving soon to take care of the twins. My final thought before the anesthesia kicked in was, I'm done being their doormat. The surgery was successful, but I woke up feeling weaker than I ever had in my life. Valerie and Olivia looked after the twins while hospital staff checked my vitals around the clock. For the first time in ages, I allowed myself to be taken care of instead of taking care of everyone else. My phone was on silent, yet I saw notification after notification piling up. Missed calls, frantic texts from my parents, and even my sister Jessica. At first, I ignored them, but curiosity got the better of me, and I skimmed through their messages. They demanded I fix this situation because they had bills to pay and a cruise planned. Not once did they ask how my surgery had gone. I was done. Instead of letting their words pierce me like they used to, I found myself reading their messages with a cold detachment. Maybe it was the medication, or maybe it was the realization that for them, I was never a daughter, just a human wallet. My father's last text read, "You can't cut us off. We're your parents. We made you who you are." If that was their idea of parenting, I wanted none of it. Meanwhile, my sister Jessica sent messages that sounded worried. "Why won't you answer me? Mom and Dad said you're overreacting to a routine checkup. Is it really that serious?" That's when I realized they had lied to her. They told her I was faking my medical emergency. Suddenly, I understood how deep their manipulation ran. A few days after my surgery, Olivia took the twins to my apartment while I rested. My job was to heal, physically and emotionally. For so long, I carried guilt and shame, thinking I owed my parents unwavering loyalty, even at the expense of my own well-being. Now I finally accepted that my children and I deserved better. Jessica eventually learned the truth about my condition. She showed up at the hospital looking pale and anxious. "Oh my God, Tasha, I had no idea you almost died," she stammered. "Mom and Dad kept insisting it was nothing." She apologized for not coming sooner and explained that our parents had heavily downplayed my situation. For the first time, I saw genuine concern on Jessica's face. She confessed she'd been living in a bubble where our parents painted me as the dramatic, ungrateful daughter who always wanted attention. It was a shock for her to realize they'd been lying to her too. Little by little, Jessica opened up about how they'd always favored her and made her believe I was deliberately distancing myself from the family. I wasn't entirely sure if I could trust her yet, but at least I knew she wasn't as cold-hearted as them. We agreed to talk more when I got discharged. I spent 5 days in the hospital. By the time I got home, my parents had left countless voicemails, ranging from angry outbursts to manipulative pity pleas. My mother's tone was especially harsh. "How dare you stop the payments? Your father and I have a lifestyle to maintain. You're being selfish." The real kicker came when they showed up unannounced at my apartment door one morning. I heard banging, followed by my dad's voice booming through the hallway. "Natasha, open up. We need to talk." By then, Jessica and I had been quietly reconnecting. She stood beside me, biting her lip anxiously. Against my better judgment, I opened the door a crack. My parents forced their way in, complaining they had no choice but to see me in person. "We're in deep trouble with the mortgage, thanks to you," my father growled. "Your monthly contributions were part of our budgeting. You can't just stop." My mother's expression was equally venomous. "We raised you, Natasha. How could you abandon us now when we need you most?" It was breathtaking how they twisted the narrative, making it seem like I was the one who betrayed them. That's when Ethan and Emily toddled in, curious about the commotion. My mother's face instantly changed. She tried to reach out to Emily, cooing, "Come here, my precious little princess." But Emily sensed the tension and clung to my leg. Even a toddler could feel their fake warmth. I told them as calmly as possible that they needed to leave. My father tried to push past me to get further into the apartment, but Jessica stepped in. "You two need to stop," she said, her voice trembling. "She just had surgery. She's not your personal bank." They stormed out, slamming the door behind them. Just before leaving, my mom hissed, "You'll regret this, mark my words." Days turned into weeks. Jessica helped me draft a message to the extended family after my parents began emailing everyone, claiming I was unhinged. In it, I laid out the facts. I had emergency surgery, my parents refused to help with the twins, and I'd ended my financial support. Some relatives were shocked. Others said they'd suspected something was off with my parents for years. Just when I thought the drama was settling, my phone rang at midnight one evening. It was my parents again, but this time they were frantic. "Natasha, we need your help," my father said, voice shaking. "The house is in foreclosure, and we have nowhere else to go." My mother's wailing was audible in the background, like a child who lost her favorite toy. The old version of me might have given in, but I remembered lying in that hospital bed with tubes in my arms, hearing them call me a burden. I simply told them, "I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't help you." Then I hung up. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, followed by an unexpected calm. This was the moment I realized I would never again rely on people who saw me and my children as inconveniences. As the foreclosure finalized, my parents had no choice but to downsize and move into a small condo. They sold most of their toys, including a boat and a timeshare. Initially, they blamed me for their downfall. Eventually, the extended family started pressuring them to explain why they felt so entitled to my money in the first place. The truth came out. They'd been living beyond their means and using my monthly payments for lavish trips, boat parties, and fancy dinners. Their house of cards finally collapsed. I hired a lawyer to draft my will, making sure my twins would go to a trusted friend if something ever happened to me. Under no circumstances would my parents become guardians. I set firm boundaries. My parents were blocked from calling or visiting, and I told Jessica she was free to have any relationship she wanted with them, but I wouldn't take part. I expected more ambushes, but the biggest surprise was a letter that arrived one morning. It was from my mother, handwritten. She apologized in shaky words for all the selfishness and cruelty. She claimed they'd started seeing a therapist and that my dad had a health scare, making them question how they'd lived their lives. It sounded almost sincere. I showed the letter to Jessica, who said, "I think they really are trying, Tasha, but I understand if it's too late for you to trust them." She was right. I wasn't sure if they were truly remorseful or just desperate for me to rescue them from their new financial reality. For once, though, it didn't eat me up. I was strong enough to make a choice for myself and my children. Over the next few months, I focused on healing both my body and my spirit. My graphic design business took off in new directions. I even started a small side project designing memorial websites for people who had lost loved ones. It felt deeply personal, a way to honor James's memory. Jessica and I built a stronger relationship, separate from our parents' drama. She spent time with Ethan and Emily, discovering that she actually enjoyed being an aunt, free from the competition our parents had fueled for so long. Valerie and Olivia became part of my found family, regularly visiting with treats and offering help when I felt overwhelmed. One day, after dropping the twins off at daycare, I looked up at the morning sky and felt an odd sensation. Peace. For so long I'd tried to earn my parents' love. I finally realized that genuine love is freely given, not coerced. My parents had taught me a harsh lesson. If someone shows you who they are, believe them. And they had shown me many times over. I'd faced betrayal, endured heartbreak, and emerged stronger. I'd protected my children from a toxic cycle of manipulation. While I might someday allow a cautious relationship with my parents, strictly on my terms, I no longer believed their approval defined my worth. My identity no longer revolved around seeking acceptance from people who saw me as nothing more than a cash machine. I remembered once feeling powerless in their presence, terrified of disappointing them, desperate for their approval. But in this new chapter of my life, I discovered a hidden reservoir of courage I never knew existed. My children became my guiding light, reminding me that love should never be conditional or transactional. Each day without toxic interference felt like stepping from darkness into daylight, and I savored the fresh air of independence. Though the road ahead still held challenges, financial uncertainties, single parenthood, and the lingering ache of James's absence, I no longer saw myself as a victim. I was a survivor, forging a family bond with people who chose to be there for me when it mattered most. My apartment walls now echoed with laughter instead of tension, the comforting hum of bedtime stories replacing the anxiety of unanswered phone calls. Yes, there were moments when guilt or nostalgia flickered in my heart, whispering that maybe I should reach out or offer my parents a second chance. But every time the thought crossed my mind, I remembered that late-night phone call, their dismissive words in the hospital, and how they would rather lose me than give up their luxuries. If they ever truly wanted to be part of my life again, they would have to prove it by their actions, not empty words or manipulative tactics. I had changed, and I refused to revert to the fearful daughter who begged for scraps of affection. I was free,